and we're ready to go. Hay is in the barn, and we'll clean things up tomorrow with a little walkthrough. We'll be ready to go. Questions?
Pat, you talked about the run game on Monday and how the running backs need to make guys miss. What about the offensive line and walking that second wave of defenders?
Yeah, the second wave usually, the backers will get some of them. And again, it's the same thing in the passing game, Jerry. It's a great question. Same thing in the passing game. I mean, Kenny can throw it to somebody, but he better be in the right spot. He better run the right route. Better read the coverage as far as where his route should be, and we better protect. So it takes 11 out there in the passing game. It takes 11 in the run game, as you guys know. It's all the same. Nothing really changes as far as, the execution. So, again, when I mentioned that, last week or whenever that was, Monday maybe, those guys need to make people miss, period. And you saw Vince Davis do that a few times. The offensive line needs to continue to block him. Saturday, a week ago, for the most part, there was no MAs. It wasn't like we turned somebody loose. We're going to turn someone loose on Saturday, I can promise you. They do some crazy stuff up front. So, there'll be guys turned loose. Syracuse, caused, I think, 9 TFLs last week against North Carolina, who's got a pretty good offensive line, pretty talented up front. So there'll be some TFLs. The big thing we got to do is prevent ourselves from having any TFLs if we can. No negative runs, which puts you behind the sticks. But our line's got to continue to block them better. And when you talk second level, those safeties, need to be blocked by by receivers, and the corners need to be blocked by receivers. So, I think to explode and get some big runs, those guys, going into the second level have got to help us out. But it takes 11.
How did Credo and Hoy grade out from after Saturday?
Credo was really our lineman of the week. So do you want me to have the percent? You want me to give you the percentage grades? What's that?
Whatever you can give me.
They played good, Jerry. Put it that way. We scored 6 straight, touchdowns. We did what we had to do. Now, it's going to be a little harder grading scale this week. The talent gets better. They get bigger. They get faster. They get stronger. So, it'll be a little bit, different as we know. So, the most important thing is what they grade this week. But they both played well. We had a lot of, really good performances on the O-line last week.
Pat, along those lines, how do you account for all that movement that they bring defensively?
Communication. You hope, Jimmy does a nice job of talking up front, knowing that, based on the guy's stance, based on this and that. I mean, there's so many things we look for, not just in alignment and not have a clue if somebody's going to move towards you. So is his elbow on his knee? What are the characteristics of a defensive lineman? What's he showing? What's he giving away? Is he in the right stance, left-hand stance? There's all those things that good offensive linemen know prior to and expect some of those stunts. So there's things we know. Are they heavy alignment? Are they looser alignment? There's some good tips that we have that we'll try to utilize.
With the Big Ten announcing their return the other day, they talked about doing daily testing. Is that something you'd like to see in the ACC, and is that being talked about at all?
No, it's not being talked about. I'm not sure. It just takes more time. I think, with what we're doing right now, we're doing it the right way. The daily testing is, I think, maybe an antigen test. I don't know. But, it's the same thing the NFL is doing. And maybe Jeff can tell us a little bit more about that. Maybe he can educate us. But from what I know, the Steelers were using the daily test. It's less invasive. It's just kind of, just in the, somewhere, you could, get to easily, I guess. I don't know what the best way to put it. But you have to do it daily. And they figure, it's not real accurate. I don't think it's as accurate as, what we're doing. I mean, the PCR test is accurate. We're getting it every 3 days. So I like that. The hay's in the barn. We got a barn back there. But so I think, again, the NFL is using that daily thing, but they figured they do it. Maybe the third day catch you might miss it on day 2, so it's not as accurate, I think, and less invasive, I believe. But I like what we're doing. I like the test. I like the protocols that we have to go with it and procedures. So, I wouldn't change anything we're doing right now. But Jeff, that's what they're doing daily, right? The NFL. I mean, so they're into that. It's just, it's not as accurate, I don't think. But it's every single day they're getting you.
Pat, you made a comment a couple weeks ago about people betting on college sports, and one of the reasons you don't talk about stuff. Since it's become legal in Pennsylvania, how have you dealt with interactions that you have? Like, do people come up to you and say, like, hey, I bet on the team the other day? Or what do you tell people that ask you or bring it up to you about gambling on sports?
Nobody brings it up to the head coach. I can tell you that, and we try to educate our players on, like, listen, we educate our players, do not talk about injuries, because, there's bookies or whatever they call them, or looking to find out, like, who's playing, who's not playing. That's why we never talk about injuries, because all it does is ask for problems. But no one's ever asked me. But when I was at Michigan State one time, the secretary came up to me and said, you got this phone call. And I'm like, so I listened to, they had it on the main. It was some guy screaming about the defense and that we gave up a late touchdown, whatever it was. And this guy was unbelievable. You talk about, these guys he must have lost a lot of money that day. I know that, but it was not good. But no, we don't have to deal with it. And you always worry about it. You talk about it. We have it in our winner's manual. We educate our players on it every year. But that's why we don't talk about injuries, just to make sure we don't, and our kids have done a great job about that. Injuries or COVID now. You had to add the COVID to it.
But you also don't want to tip off the opponent. Is that also correct?
Yeah, sometimes. But to me, it's more about just, that's part of it, I would say, for sure. But, it's a little bit of both. There's no reason. Nobody needs to know anything. It's our family. And Jerry, I always, play with you a little bit, but, like, it doesn't matter. Nobody needs to know what's going on. It's also their personal information too. It's stuff that, the kids might not want out there. If they want it out there, they'll tweet it out there.
Pat, a coach once told me that if a guy known to have a bad ankle, the other team will go after that bad ankle. Have you seen incidents like that in your career?
You know what? I think so. I've heard of people under the piles, even if you have a good ankle, trying to twist stuff and punch you in different places. So that happens on the field. With all the cameras and camera angles, we've seen more of it get picked up. Some of the worst things, like in our bowl game, when someone spits in somebody's face. Imagine if somebody spit in somebody's face in 2020 during this pandemic. Could be some crazy stuff going on, but it gets mean out there. And in this game Saturday would be like that. It's one of those ones that we warn our kids about.
Pat, some of these games with Syracuse have been unique. Do you kind of go into when you're facing them and just kind of expect the unexpected, because there have been so many different things that have happened when you guys have played the Orange?
Yeah, it's always been a good game. You're going to expect a good game. It's not going to be 55-0. I can promise you that. I've talked to our guys on Tuesday, our first team meeting, about it's going to be a dogfight. Dino Babers will have them ready to go. Our guys will be ready to go, and whoever makes more mistakes is going to lose. So the knowledge part of it and the execution is going to be critical in all phases, in all groups. So you don't want to be that wide receiver that didn't get that block that sprung for a touchdown that wins the game. You don't want to be that DB that gave up that play or, had a holding call, whatever it may be. The details are going to be really, really important when you get into a dogfight like this one has been for the last 4 years with the Baber Orange.
And where did you kind of find Servassier Dennis? He was a late ad in that 2019 class. How did that kind of come into being?
I think I told the story a long time ago, but it's funny. We were out recruiting. I actually found him. We went into his high school, and we were looking at the next year's class. It was in January for sure. And we're looking at him, and we're, we go into school. We're sitting in kind of a lounge area with the head coaches talking. He says, I got this linebacker. I'm like, really? For this class? I said, let me see some tape. So he gave it to me. I watched it on my phone. I'm like, that guy's pretty good. I said, I'd like to see what he looks like. So we brought him down. Obviously, there was a contact period. We could talk to him. Brought him down, and I liked what he did there. And then he sent me a couple texts of him dunking a basketball. He's really athletic. And that's kind of how it happened. I offered him on the spot. We brought him in that weekend. He committed. It was over. As soon as we offered him, though, Syracuse offered him, which I think they were trying to keep in his back pocket or whatever they were. They didn't want anybody to know about him. I don't know what it was. But as soon as we offered, they offered. And obviously, he came to Pitt. His mother's a big Syracuse fan, though. So that's always interesting.
Pat, you talked about how you were happy about the way Vincent Davis was making people miss last week. After seeing another week of practice, how have you felt about the progress of him and the running backs and who you want to emphasize in getting the ball to in your first ACC game?
Vince has really grown up. He's out there tutoring guys, which I've never seen him do that before. He's not just about himself. I mean, that's an unselfish group of running backs, maybe too unselfish. I talk about being unselfish all the time. It's like, I think they want to give everybody a turn. I'd like to have one more daddy back there and hand it off to that guy 50 times. But Vince has had a great week. So has AJ Davis and Izzy's been good. And I'm forgetting one that's on Daniel Carter. I mean, they've all been good. Like I said, it's going to come down to who's, running like their tail's on fire. That's what we're looking for. And we'll eventually find it. We'll play them all. And see what they got. But Vince was the guy that showed up last week, so he'll start.
Pat, without Lucas, you got a chance to. Kai played, Moraga played. Of course, Kai had that drop. How has he responded to that, and what did you think of the play of your tight ends?
I've liked, what our tight ends have done. I was impressed. Morita's a physical guy. He runs really well, and he's going to play a lot of football for us. Kai's done a great job. He's had a great camp, even early when, Danny was, didn't have a lot of early reps for whatever reason. But Kai has been there, and Kai's been great this week. Those are some of the hardest balls to catch, as you know. I mean, he catches all these, these bullets that are being thrown at him, and then all of a sudden it's this lobbed one, and you're wide open, and you're like this. It's like catching a punt. And he just wanted to score. He turned his head too quick. So we have a lot of confidence in Kai. We've got a lot of confidence in Danny, and when Lucas Kroll comes back, you'll be impressed with him too.
Any final questions?
Pat, with the offense in the red zone, you ran the ball a couple of those times. It was maybe only a half a yard or something like that, and it was straight to the running game. That was something that gave you some trouble at some points last year. Is there something different you're doing there? Was that a point of emphasis at all on trying to get that running game going in the goal line and short yardage situations for this year?
Yeah, I mean, we can't give up on it. I mean, there's going to be a 1 yard gain. There's going to be a -2. There's going to be a 3 yard gain. There's going to be a 4 yard gain. There's going to be a 5, and hopefully there's a 55, coming in there somewhere. But we certainly worked on it. We certainly talked about what we have to do in the red zone. And again, as you guys know, the red zone starts to get smaller, and you start to get closer to that goal line. It's hard to beat anybody deep. So your passing game, the windows and the field tightens down, and you got to be able to run the ball when you get to the red zone. And that was why it was good last week. And we've got to continue to stress, us running the ball in the red zone. And we had a lot of, red zone periods in camp. First practice 3 of spring ball that, it was our, first padded practice and our last padded practice in the spring. We were in the red zone for 10 minutes that day. So we started it early. We wish we'd have got a lot more in the spring, and then we focused on it when we, came to, to this season and this fall camp.
I know we've established that we don't talk about injuries, but that looked like it had the potential to be serious for Haba. Do you have any kind of update on whether that's at least short-term, long-term kind of thing?
If he was out for the year, I would tell you, but Haba's doing well.